This is my 2008 Subaru Legacy GT. Aside from being filthy, it has a bunch of cosmetic imperfections. A cracked rear panel, rust in the door seam, some scratches, a rust hole in the rear wheel well, and some pretty bad orange peel from the front bumper that I repainted a few years ago. Today, I'm going to start with that cracked rear panel. It looks pretty terrible, so it's the first thing I'm going to start with. A new unpainted panel from the dealer was over $100. So I went to the junkyard and got this used one for $20. It's the wrong color and it's gonna need some repairs. The plan is to respray it using rattle cans, so we'll see how that comes out. Mistakes are gonna be made along the way, but that's how you learn. The best part is I got a bucket of hardware with it too, so I got my Subaru badge, which went right there, and then Legacy badge bits, which unfortunately come off in individual pieces, and then as well as a bunch of clips and stuff, which I may or may not need. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try sanding this down. We'll start with like 120 grit, and then I'm going to use some Bondo glass. This stuff is desirable above regular Bondo because it's short strand glass reinforced. It's a little bit stronger and it won't break as easily for any forces that happen to be on it as opposed to regular Bondo, because I haven't had luck using regular Bondo. It chips off rather easily and it's kind of finicky. So that'll be used to fill up and fix these chips and stuff. So of course I'm just going to be sanding this down, so I want sanding pads. I bought some of these, which are sanding disc wheels, and these should just go right on there. It's not going anywhere. Cool. Open up when you're done. Okay, let's get this installed first. Cool. All right, I think it's enough talking, so I'm gonna go ahead and try and see how this sands. The pad shifted a little bit and it looks like I'm digging in a little bit with my Velcro bit there. Pad's starting to give out a little bit, so probably time to change that. There probably is a difference between cheap sandpaper and expensive sandpaper, and I did buy the cheap stuff, so we'll see how that goes. This pad, what's nice about it is it does have some give, so I can get it into the corners and stuff, and it doesn't dig in too bad. I find myself angling it up a little bit to try and get spots to it, because when I just lay it flat, it doesn't really do that much. So hopefully that's all right. I'm not digging in, making any low spots or anything, but I think I'll fill in later. It's a low risk part, you know? All right, so the sander can't really get in some of these crevices that well, so I'm gonna switch to doing it by hand, using some of the leftover pads that aren't totally done yet. Probably not gonna work, but I'll give it a shot. It takes forever. So there's some spots like this recessed area here that is going to be hard to deal with. I'm not going to get the paint in there perfect. I think what I'm going to do is just sand down the edge and get it close enough. There's a license plate in front of this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. There's some broken bits on here that I'm going to have to deal with using that Bondo. I also have to go along here and get all this stuff cleaned off. These seals I want to leave in place because I don't have new ones. I could get some maybe if I need to. I probably should have masked that off, or at least I should when I go to paint it. Okay, I think this is a pretty good first pass on here. Again, it's 120 grit. I am somewhat afraid that the paint will start to peel if there's any sharp edges that I don't really have done, but I don't know how to deal with that. I think next what I'm going to do is do a quick pass with a higher grit like 400 and just see how well it smooths it up. I don't think it has to be, glossy smooth. In fact, I don't think it should be because it's supposed to have good adhesion. When you get a brand new part that's unpainted, you actually want to scuff it up a little bit with some Scotch-Brite to get it to stick. Well, that helped a little bit, but it did kind of expose some of these deep scratches that I got in here from using the lower grit sandpaper. But it's smooth to the touch, so that's good at least. Okay, I think I'm done sanding now. I need to deal with this spot up here and this spot down here. So I'm going to mix up some Bondo, try and get that done. I did do a pass once already, and I strengthened all these clip areas. I had to bond a couple of these clip mounts back on entirely because they simply snap off. Because this spot on the car gets baked in sun and the plastic becomes brittle or whatever, and you're going to pop this panel off and these things just pop right off. So those have been strengthened. Now on the old one, I was prying on it and it snapped clean off right along here because this section right here is kind of weak. So I don't know if this is a good idea, but I bonded in some wooden dowels to strengthen that area, and it definitely helps. It makes it stronger. But I'm worried about this wood soaking up water and expanding and rotting and holding moisture. So I need to do something to at least seal that up a little bit better. Probably spray it with paint or something. I think I'm going to file it down with file to try and get a good surface area on here before I bond it, because I did try doing this once a while ago off camera. And it didn't work out. The Bondo cracked right off again, which is really frustrating. So I'm going to try and make a better surface for the Bondo to adhere to on here. So I just used this file, scuffed it up nice and good, and left some decent surface area for the Bondo to cling to. So now I've got what looks like a pretty good surface for that Bondo to cling to. So it should not break off as easily this time. Now I'm going to go in with a little bit of alcohol just to get any dust off here. I could use acetone, but I'm not really sure if that's going to melt. Three-inch diameter circle, 1/2 inch thick of filler with 3-inch long strip of hardener. Ugh. This is probably, I don't know, a 1.5 inch half-inch thick glob, I guess. Jeez, I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so I guess that means we'll do like a 1.5-inch strip of hardener. Something like that. So I have a strip of plastic that I'm going to wedge in here to make sort of a backing for that Bondo so it doesn't just go all over that seal. And it's kind of important to like actually smear it in a bit. Alright, it's starting to harden a little bit, so I gotta move quicker. Okay, so Bondo has dried, I hope. Now I'm gonna try and peel off this plastic back here. Yeah, look at that. Cool. Now I've got a nice, flat, smooth surface here behind there, and then I have to go in here and trim up this. I'm going to use a sanding block now because it makes it easier to actually get flat surfaces instead of trying to do it with just your hand and a piece of sandpaper. Okay, I'm going to go in by hand with some higher grit sandpaper, smooth it out a little bit. And the Bondo just cracked off again. It's just not sticking worth a shit. So I'm a little bit unhappy with this this Bondo here. And I don't even really like how I did this stiffening solution. I think it's kind of janky. And the fact that this doesn't stick means that it's pretty easy to get that off. Which is probably a good thing, for at least for that. Get a load of this. Because of how badly this Bondo is adhering, it's really easy to peel off. And that also means these tabs I glued back on, that was never going to work. For this section here, this is really a pain because Bondo is not meant for this sort of thing and it won't flex properly. And there are some plastic fillers you can use, but they're pretty much all for very thin surfaces. The stuff for thicker surfaces is very expensive and only comes in large quantities. There is a JB Weld plastic product, but it doesn't work for polypropylene. And PC-PET. I wonder what that means. Let's look that up. All right, so that is polycarbonate polyethylene terephthalate. Polycarbonate and polyethylene. JB Weld, plastic weld. And does not adhere to polyethylene, polypropylene, or some other plastics. I'm considering using regular ass JB Weld just for science to see how it goes. I don't expect it to work. So Guess we'll see. Okay, I've mixed up some JB Weld, and this is just an experiment. I don't really expect this to work. It's probably too thick anyways, but we're just gonna give this a shot. Okay, I've got this piece glued back on, and that edge piece here gluing back on using JB Weld. It's still a little bit flexible too, so it's not going to break off that easily. That is on there. That is good. This piece is much better than with the Bondo. That's not coming off either. Wow. That is much stronger than the Bondo. It allows for some flexing without crumbling. All right, we'll run with that. Now I'm just gonna go through some higher grit sandpaper, smooth it up a little bit. Did one more little pass with some 400 grit. It's all looking good. Now I need to clean up my workspace and clean the part itself. Now it's time to do some washing to get all the dust and stuff off. Okay, well this seal is holding moisture and is creating problems, and I'm going to take it off at some point anyways. So I'm going to take it off now, and it's going to make a mess, so I'm going to have to rewash all this. Yeah, see all that dust and dirt in there? That's no good. Now there's definitely not zero airborne particulates, which is tricky. There's really no way I can get around that. So there's going to be some amount of stuff settling on this, but it's the best I can do. A fresh can of adhesion promoter. I've heard that this isn't actually necessary. Of course, there's always a professional with who has contradicting opinions, but I'm going to use it anyways. I'm just going to read the directions and condense down what it says. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. I'm going to wipe this down with a tack cloth, get it pretty clean. Adhesion promoter goes on in 3 coats, a few minutes between each coat. And then within 10 minutes of that, I'm going to apply my primer. And this is pretty easy. A few coats of this, 5-10 minutes between coats. I'm going to go nice and light on everything just to make sure I don't have any wet spots that never dry, because that's pretty commonly something that happens for me. It's probably around 75 degrees in here, which is pretty optimal, not too humid, and it's not too cold, not too hot. I gotta shake the crap out of this stuff. Okay, last coat. Done with that. Now we gotta use the primer within 10 minutes of that last coat drying. I can see one little speck here that's settled on here. I'm just gonna leave it and I'll sand it down later on when I go to do the, after the primer's done. It looks like it's gonna be the same exact color, so it's gonna be hard to tell how good my coverage is. Final coat of primer. So the priming is done. I've done 3 coats now, and it's pretty atrocious. There's lots of granules and dust on the surface that's just loose. It didn't stick whatsoever. Most of it appears to have sticked, but a lot of it didn't. If I try painting this, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be awful. The next issue is that they don't want you to sand it. They want you to just slap on some base coat within an hour of priming, which I think is a horrible idea because this obviously needs sanding. All right, so it's been the better part of an hour. So I'm gonna go in here with some 600 grit and just see what happens when I lightly scuff it up. Oh yeah, that's all it needs. Very, very light sanding. Yeah, it's still a little bit gummy, which kind of sucks. Well, I really don't have confidence with this, but let's just keep going. Picking up a ridiculous amount of primer. I tested a piece on the test strip and it appears to actually match my base color, so that's good. All right. Go pretty light. First one. A little bit easier when you actually see the difference in color. Watching the footage back, it's pretty obvious that I'm holding that can way too horizontally. This is what's causing it to not spray properly. Unfortunately, I didn't realize this at the time, so I continued to finish the panel making the same mistake. It's letting some liquid and stuff get through. Yeah, I don't know. This is what it looks like after the first coat. You can tell there's clearly not full coverage, which is good. You don't want to go too heavy on it. Kind of looks like there's still some dusty particles. I'm not sure. Not really going to touch it yet. We're just going to see what happens.
So here's what it looks like after that third coat dried. It's still a little bit blotchy, but I guess it's going to be like that until I do the clear coat. Thankfully, none of the spots are more dark or glossy than others, which I guess is good. All in all, it looks okay, and I'm going to resume to doing the clear coat now. Great, another shitty nozzle. Awesome. Come on. Yeah. So it came out okay. It's not a perfect finish, and you can still see some swirls and stuff in places. I don't really know if that's low spots or what. And there's a little bit of inconsistency with these edges. That's probably because of the power tool that I use to sand. I must have gouged it up a little bit, so I'd have to be more careful next time to use sandpaper, and I don't think I even have to remove every last bit of old paint. I could probably just get it good enough next time. Alright, so next up I'm going to use some regular ass weather stripping to put along the seam here. I don't think it really makes a difference if it's an OEM part or not. Yeah. See how brittle this thing is. It's crazy. Look at all these things just cracked off. Look at that. Gosh, maybe I should just buy a new one. I was gonna add badges to this, and on this side as well, but paint has to dry more for a longer time. I'm probably gonna polish it up first, and I bet if I try taking this emblem off, it's gonna totally rip the paint off with it. So I might wait. I think the final plan is gonna be see how this polishes up, if at all, and then I'll probably buy a fresh piece unpainted and do it properly with a spray gun at some point. But this at least means I don't have a cracked panel anymore, and maybe it'll polish up nicely. I'm not really sure. Plenty to do on the car though still. Lots left to improve.
That does it for this video. Next time I'm going to try wet sanding and polishing this rear panel to try and make it look a little bit better. I'm also going to move on to other parts of the car with a little bit more success this time. So, as always, thanks for watching and feel free to like and subscribe.